don't ask for life to be easier. Ask for you to get stronger, because 2 years from now, there's another level coming and it's way harder than this one. And I'll never get through it if I don't do this one now. And if you can go down at that tiny little level and change one person by one belief, you can change their entire destiny.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Mind of the Week. And you are here with me with special guests who I invite for the audience, for you, for the lovely listener, to spark inspiration and to shift your awareness. My name is Julia Seibold, and today my guest is the legend, Eric Edmeades.
Well, legend in my own mind, maybe.
All right. Well, hi, Eric. I'm truly honored to share this conversation with you.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. And you are a legend because you are an extremely powerful storyteller. And you have impacted the way my husband, my children, and I see our own stories and how we communicate. So you have changed our lives. This is like, you are such an inspiration.
I am so glad. I appreciate hearing that so much. And I especially love that it's not, I love when it spills over into the family, and I'm grateful to hear that.
Yeah, it's all through many programs which we attended, WildFit and Speaking Academy. So it has its effect. It's fabulous. So we could discuss many topics here today. And today we will actually be discussing mindset for young adults. And it would be super cool if at the end of this conversation, we had about like 3 or 5 key mindset skills, which you believe are absolutely essential. And that would be fabulous. So that's great. And to just introduce you to the very few who don't know you so well, when I read your bio and what you've done, and it reads like it's a long list. So this would take a lot of time. But let me just sum it up. What I see in there is that you are a serial entrepreneur and that you have owned many businesses in different industries. And it sparks out that you have done some special effects in Hollywood early in your career with great blockbuster movies like Pirates of the Caribbean and Avatar and Iron Man and so on. And then I thought, okay, well, Eric, you're kind of still in the special effects category, aren't you? So you are still a special effects guy. When I look at it, like, you could read anything after that, but you're the founder of WildFit, and I can vouch for its effectiveness. It's fabulous. Wherever it's a health coaching program, it has special effects. And like last year I did the Speaking Academy, and when I hear participants talk about it or you read about it, you have lasting impact. So there is special effects in whatever you do and touch in the business world, and it's fascinating. And Speaker Nation is another project, and the list goes on and on because you don't stop. It, like, everything you touch, if it's Thrive TV with your latest project, which you took now on over the quarantine time, it's fascinating. So I just call you the special effects guy. That makes it so easier, and your bio is
That's very cute. Thank you.
So it just stuns me because it really is remarkable, Eric. And it kind of gives us clues as well. So that you somehow crack the code, or, like there is some success element in there, because it just doesn't come out of nowhere that you are successful like that. And that's why I have mentioned it as well, because, you design your life. There must be a formula or ingredients which you have seen over your life development. And I would be absolutely thrilled if you could give us a little bit of a backstage, behind the scenes tour of your development, your mental mind strategy development, because I think that would be fascinating for the audience. So that would be great. So maybe we kind of start asking, when did you become so aware of your communication skills?
Really, I only sort of became aware of them having, I don't even know, I think the best way to say it is there came a point about 5-6 years ago when I thought maybe I had a bit of a gift in that area. Prior to that, I was just me doing my thing. And but as I look back, I can talk about the development of it, the development of the perspective that it took to get that way. And I think that, you know, whether we're talking about developing effective coaching and transformation programs, or doing live coaching with people, or storytelling, for any of that, the fact is, one of the things that helps a great deal is an exercise sense of empathy. It's very difficult to design a coaching program that actually works if you don't really do the very best you can to get into the mind of the client. It's very difficult, for example, to do a live coaching with somebody if you can't feel what they're feeling, or at least a close estimation of what they're feeling. And equally, you can't tell stories to people if you can't read their energy and see where they like the story and where they don't like the story, and when they need you to speed it up and when they need you to slow it down. So there's this sort of what, you know, some people get all fancy about ESP, extra sensory perception. Well, I would say that most people could activate a bunch of ESP by just paying more attention, right? by having curiosity about the people they're working with, and paying more attention to the small micro expressions on their face, or the tiny little changes in their vocal tones, and that are communicating with you and telling you stuff. And remember, you know, when you're paying attention to those things, it's not like you're spying on them. The fact is that when somebody changes their voice, or they have a certain facial expression, or they hold a certain posture, that is an attempt at communication, even if they aren't consciously aware of it. And so I think one of the things that helps us get really in tune with people is to watch that communication. So Julia, you've seen me working with people, say at Speaker Nation, at Speaking Academy, and you've seen somebody on the stage who's stuck. You've seen that. And then you've seen me hear what they say, pay attention to what they're saying, and then say two things and have them transform in a second. You've seen that?
Yeah.
Right. I can't remember exactly which Speaking Academy you're at, but of course that happens at every one. So it's safe for me to guess that for you. And the fact is I think why I can do that for people so often is that I really attach to what they're feeling. And so I just look at my own journey of escaping those feelings and then try to get people through that stuff. And I think it comes, funny enough, I was having breakfast with a really interesting guy today, and we're talking about, you know, people who walk off into the world constantly asking, what if? You know, people are always going, what if? And sometimes it seems like a bit of a negative question, but the truth is that if we've had challenging childhoods, I believe that often when the future comes at us, we are less affected by that, because we already overcame so many things as childhoods. And I had a challenging childhood, and, you know, not a bad childhood, just a challenging one.
Yeah. So what I hear in that is so many things which we could tap onto, but it's fascinating that you speak about empathy, because that is one thing which I definitely saw in your program. And having gone through the online program with WildFit and then the live version, you know, let us really look at how you are able to do that, so that others are able to take something from that, from your gift there, that you are so aware of your own person and the other person in the room. And you do that online and via in the actual live, you know, audience. That's fantastic. And that's what I could see and feel. You are there with people. So that's truly a gift, and makes the listener, if it's one-to-one or one-to-many, just be seen. You know, that's the effect you must see when people you don't even have met them, and they come up to you and feel like as if they're friends. That, you know, happened to me at Mind Valley. I bumped into you and thought you are already my friend, because you were in our kitchen 6 weeks long every day, and welcoming us. And so you create that connection, and so you have got that gift. And is there more to it? Like how do we do that? Like, as a human being, connection building is such an important part, and communication is the way we do it. So how can we take that a level deeper?
Well, I think one thing that we have to understand is that we are born very effective communicators. And if we weren't, we would have starved to death. Like, you know, you have to be able to communicate with your mother and the people that are caring for you. We're born that way. And then we will go through a variety of processes, conditioning processes that will serve to, on the outside, they'll serve to make us more socially acceptable human beings. But the truth is, then it'll go too far. And what I mean by that is that, yes, you probably do want to teach your children that they shouldn't do too much shouting and screaming when there are other people around. You do want to teach that to them. You want to teach them that there are sort of, there's a fabric to society, and you're supposed to not tear it, right? So you want to teach them that. But I think what happens very often is that we over teach that. And so we end up with a bunch of people who, well, Julia, I'll put it to you this way. Is it possible, have you ever had the experience where you're with a friend that you feel quite comfortable with, you feel quite connected with them, and so you're telling them a story and your voice is kind of excited, and then this happened and then that happened, and then somebody comes and joins you at the party or at the table, and then you kind of bring it down a little. Have you ever had that experience?
Yes.
See, then another person comes to the table, and then another person comes to the table, and pretty soon it's like, and then we were walking through the store, and what's going on is our fear of lack of acceptance, our fear of ostracization, our fear of judgment means that the more people that are observing us, the more we want to end up constraining ourselves, because we were taught as kids not to be overly expressive very often. And so one of the things that helps a great deal is to let go of that, is to let go of it. And by the way, Julia, look, I have no judgment about alcohol. I have my beliefs about the way people use it sometimes, but I'm not one of these people who thinks it should be banned or anything. I will say that I am in my, I think, 30th year having not had alcohol. And so it gives me a little bit of a perspective, because you see, I have friends that frankly, they're better friends once they've had a glass of wine. It's just like, they're quite stiff and they're quite stuck, and then they have one glass of wine and now they can be fun and they're a little chilled. And then after two, it's pretty good. But then once they have the third glass of wine, I have to leave. I have to leave because their voices get too loud and they start shouting over top of each other, and they're not listening to each other because they've gone too far. Now, why I mention this is that feeling before the third glass of wine, that feeling of looseness, that feeling of freedom, that feeling of communicating the way you want to communicate, that's a feeling that we are so missing from our childhoods, that we turn to wine or alcohol to make it happen. And so I'm saying that one of the ways to achieve the very thing you're doing is to have a metaphorical glass of wine before a coaching session. And I mean a metaphorical one. I mean, figure out a way to release your inhibitions and be able to use your voice the way you want to, the way you would if you were talking to a bunch of 8-year-olds or to somebody that you really loved and felt safe with, and to not be afraid to be fully yourself no matter who's watching. And if you can do that, then it helps a great deal. Now, Julia, you mentioned that I'm able to create that feeling for you at a live event. Well, at a live event, I'm able to read you. I'm able to read the audience. So I can adjust my speed, my tempo, my intensity up or down, depending on what's required in that live room. But when I'm creating a video program, it's a lot more difficult because I can't read the audience for that. And that's where I'm very blessed to have done thousands and thousands of hours of retreats and seminars on stage, because I have a relatively good idea, which allows me to go into my head and create an audience. And I have an audience out there. And when I'm recording stuff on video, I am speaking for that audience, and I'm sort of visualizing or experiencing their reactions. And by doing that, it means that I'm really connecting with energy, which means that the people watching on the video feel like I'm really there with them. At least that's the theory.
Yeah. I mean, I had another Mind of the Week talk 2 weeks ago. It was an Olympic athlete, and he spoke about the power of visualization for his peak performance. So it's more and more becoming like kind of some tool which people want to use, and you could tap into meditation there, which is obviously part of that as well. And the power of visualization to actually get yourself to a place already mentally. And I think, as we talk about it, this is such a powerful gift. If we could teach that to children, to continue to daydream, to continue to just be with their thoughts and create the images and the movies in their mind, then this would be so powerful. Why do people stop? Wouldn't it be
Julia,
beautiful?
I think part of what happens is that we're under the illusion that easy is good and difficult is bad. That's the illusion that we live with, that easy is good and difficult is bad. And in some cases, maybe that's true. Like, I would wish an easy childbirth on every mother on earth, not a difficult one. And so in that context, it seems like easy might be good and difficult might be bad. But when it comes to, say, life itself, no. Now we have to take a different switch. There may be individual things that would be nice if that was easier rather than difficult. But as a life, no, don't ask for life to be easier. ask for you to get stronger, as Jim Rohn always used to say. And so that's how I look at it. Now, kids understand this principle in the virtual world, but they're not growing up with it in the present world. And so here's an example. A child is playing a video game and they get so frustrated when the video game gets really hard, but they play it. And when they get to the tough level, and they're so frustrated, but they're excited. It's the tough level. Come on, guys, let's do it. And they go at it and they go at it and they go at it and they fail and they fail and they fail. And then one day they get through the tough level and they get all this rush of biochemistry. It's like, oh, achievement. You cannot have that feeling without first the difficulty. And in the games, they understand that. In the game, they get it. In fact, they get it so much now that games are designed with difficulty levels. And so the child plays the difficulty level at like medium level and beats the whole game. What does the child do now when it wants to play the game again? It doesn't put it back to medium and play again because that would be boring. They put it to difficult.
Yeah.
And then they play it again.
Yeah.
And then they put it on, and they have some of the games, Julie, I don't know if you play games much, but they have something called, some of them have something called impossible mode. Like, so they put it into impossible mode and then they do it again. So in their games, they understand that difficult is good, but for some reason in life, they believe difficult is bad. And so what I want to suggest is that if there is one takeaway that we can give to young people, it's to embrace difficulty. It's to embrace challenges. It's that when something comes along and hurts your heart, when something comes along and disturbs your soul, when something comes along and it's physically challenging, you should stand up and go, ah, this is where I level up. This is where I get stronger. This is how I play the game better. And because thank God I get to go through this level now, because 2 years from now, there's another level coming and it's way harder than this one. And I'll never get through it if I don't do this one now. Because 2 years from now, there's another level coming and it's way harder than this one. And I'll never get through it if I don't do this one now. And so I think if we can get kids to bring their gaming mentality into their life mentality, then everything changes.
I love that. I love that so much. You know, when you spoke, I just could see young children play and have fun and grow. And that's why they accelerate as well so much with their learning, because they're just constantly at that, you know, exciting mode. And, and then as soon as you become a young adult, you kind of are supposed to know it all. You're supposed to have learned everything in school. Now you're thrown out of your parents' nest. And then you are in this kind of, what do I do now? Who am I? And so I see that age group, and tell me if you think I'm right, I see that age group of 18 to 28-year-olds as a really golden window, a golden window of transformation, because early, like I can relate to that for my life, and that's why I'm so passionate about that as well. In my mid-20s, I had a wonderful childhood, and in my early 20s, I developed, you know, went to some seminars and took a whole new approach to life, learning that what I learned before must not all be true. And so I started questioning things, and this was freeing me. And I wish that a lot of young people had the opportunity just to question stuff and see things from a different perspective, and do that as early as possible and let go of all the baggage. And, you know, just before they enter a sincere relationship, before they take their stuff into their marriages and relationships and put it onto their children. So I think there is a window. Do you agree that there is a window of importance for development?
I think that there's a series of windows and they all blend into each other, and you're absolutely right. So let me put it this way, is that, look, when we see some children 4, 5, 6 years old and they're play fighting, you know, what they're doing is they're building their reflexes and building their muscles, and they're training for being a teenager. And then when they get to the teenage years, they now experiment with relationships, and they experiment with, you know, dating, and you know, they test out love, and they test out jealousy, and they test out anger, and they test all that stuff out, because as a teenager, they're training to enter into their 20s. And then they go into their 20s and they either continue delving deeper into their education, or they maybe turn into the workforce at this point, and they're building their foundation in their 20s, right? So what they're doing in their 20s is they're training for their 30s. And then they're going to get into their 30s, and in their 30s they're going to be a little bit more established in their career, and now they're probably taking the family life a lot more seriously, and they've maybe decided to jump into quite a serious relationship. And then what they're doing is they're training for their 40s. And you see, the reason I put it this way is that there is no destination. The destination is to die. That's the destination. But we live like we're moving from one destination to the next destination to the next destination. And we're not. We are living in the present for the current destination. Their only destination is now. That's the only destination. It's now. And then after that, it's your life experience. And so, you know, when somebody goes, oh, when I finally get here, I'll be happy. Or when I finally achieve this, I'll be happy. They're thinking it's a destination. But the truth is, we've all had the experience of achieving that thing that we thought if we achieved that thing, then we'd all be happy with that thing and we'd be happy ever after. Because guess what? Disney told us that there was such a thing as happily ever after. But no, there is happy right now because I choose to be in the current conditions I have. Then what I can do is figure out how to find happiness within that situation. And at the end of the day, if I can't really reconcile with one truth, life's going to be hard for me. And that one truth is that everything is always happening for you, especially when it feels like it isn't. Because when something's really hard in your 20s, it's getting you ready for the harder thing that's coming in your 30s. So if you sidestep it, if you try to avoid it, that's why we're going to end up repeating patterns, because in a very real sense, you can't get through that level of the game until you've overcome that level of the game. So if anybody feels like I keep repeating the same pattern, well, yeah, that's the level of the game you're stuck at. And one day you'll break through it and you'll go to the next one. And then you'll probably repeat the next pattern a little while. So I'm with you that there's this golden opportunity in that age. But I think what we want to do is be really clear that that golden opportunity is not to arrive somewhere. It's to prepare for the rest of the journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I also thought, you know, like this would prevent certain things happening in their 30s and 40s because they are still so young. They're still thinking, okay, then, you know, they hear from the outside, now is the time to do stuff. Options are there. Options are there for you to take, to grab and to get hold on. And their career paths might be open. Now, things have shifted over the last decades, isn't it? So we're not stuck with one education and just stay in it forever. So we have lifted that kind of, that people don't in their 20s think they need to be in that one tied until they're 70. So, but still there is this time when it's so much happening for them. And they believe life is tough, as you say, and they don't want that. And all these opportunities, and they want it so easy. They want it instant and now. And so I love the way you described it. It's training. It's constant training. And when we are becoming so committed to our own journey, then everyone, no matter what age, can turn their lives around. And this is fabulous. It's good that our mind is possible to do all that stuff. So I like your analogy as well with the gaming. And just as you talked, I thought as well about sports. Sports is so much fun because it's tough. And we like sports because, you know, the tougher it gets, the tougher a game goes, like a basketball game or whatever it is, then we're really excited and engaged with it. So that's why there are a lot of people who actually like the toughness of sports.
It's also hard-coded into us, Julia. Think about this. Let's say, for example, you're watching, you know, an ice hockey game, and you're not really a big fan. You don't have your home team, but you happen to be at the gold medal game or the final championship game, and you're there with some friends, and you get caught up in the energy of it. And then you hear that the one team has been like #1 in the league all year. They're winning all their games. They have an incredible coach. They're doing great. But then you hear this other team, and the other team was really struggling in the early part of the season. And then they had a bus accident and 3 of their players were killed. And then they carried on. And by the halfway point in the season, they were basically a write-off. There was no way they're going to make it. But then something happened over Christmas, and then they started climbing their way back, and they just squeaked into the playoffs. They were the last, and now they've made it all the way through the playoffs. And now they're playing the champions. Who are you hoping is going to win?
Well, the underdog.
Exactly. And it's just natural for us. We love stories like that. And so we try to make ourselves underdogs by making life look harder sometimes than it really is. And here's another version of it. This is so important to break this pattern. When you're in school, you go to give a presentation. Okay. So the first kid gives its presentation. I'm here giving a presentation of the science fair project that I did. I made this happen. I put that together, and then this proves that. And there's my presentation. And everybody's like, then the next kid comes up. um, and it's crying and it's like nervous and shaking and I did my project and blah, blah, blah. And then he finishes. What kind of applause does that kid get?
Immense.
5 times louder. And how much love does that kid get from the teacher? 5 times more, because we reward effort. We reward this idea of effort. And so people have been conditioned into efforting. They've been conditioned into making their life look harder than it really is. Mm-hmm. And so then the problem for them even is jealousy. When they see somebody else who's living an easy life, then they're like, don't you understand? You're supposed to make it look hard. And so one of the things that I'm suggesting here is that it's okay for it to be hard, but don't make it harder than it really is. You know, admit when it's easy and focus on your skills. And when it's hard, don't rebel against that, but jump in with excitement about it and know that it's making you stronger. And I a lot of times people ask me if you could go back and tell yourself at 19 anything, you blah, blah, blah. Mostly I wouldn't tell myself anything because I like the way my life worked out and I don't really want to ruin that. But if I was going to say one thing, it might be this. Don't worry so much. Just live each day. And when you feel that anxiety come up, just know that everything is going to be okay in the end. Some things will be painful and some things will be difficult. But the truth of it is you will even look back upon those things and you'll be grateful that they happened to you. So you may as well relax, let go of the anxiety and do the very best you can to enjoy every step of the way. That's it. That's the only thing I tell myself at 19. And that's what I'd love for just about every young person to get. Yeah. Don't buy into the illusion. And Julia, here's another side of this. This is so important. Every generation does this thing. Oh, you think life is hard now? Well, you should have seen when I was a kid. Yeah. You know, when I was a kid, you know, we didn't even have computers and we had to do that. And then grandfather's like, oh yeah, you think your life was hard. I had to walk uphill to school and uphill home from school. And every generation is like saying how much harder their life was every step of the way. And I think something incredibly important is being missed out. And the fact is that the easier your life is, the easier your conditions are, the harder your life becomes. So the truth is that life in many ways is harder now for the teens of today than it was for the teens that went and fought World War I, because they have this illusion of choice, because they don't have a set direction that they're told to walk in. And so they have this constant feeling they might be making the wrong decision or they might be missing out or something like that. I think that life is harder for young people today than it has ever been, except that they should rejoice in that. Mm-hmm. And they should accept that that's why they're going to be strong and that's what's going to prepare them for whatever's coming next.
I love that. Okay, let's take a note of that because that's truly important to really rejoice the moment and live the moment and just, you know, be in the moment and just take it as it is and to grow from that. If it's struggle, grow. If it's difficult, find help and do all the things necessary to keep breaking patterns. And so when I hear you speak, I mean, I know about beliefs as well. And you touched on the belief that life has to be tough, life has to be difficult and all of that. So would you agree that if we break down or get an idea of the beliefs who are running us very early, that we would live a more freer life?
Oh, there's no question. So, I mean, there's no question. At any given moment, you know, you have a billion bits of information bombarding your entire nervous system the whole time, sight, sound, smells, feelings, and so forth. They're just coming at you the whole time. And there's no way you can concentrate on all of them. And you have to assess meanings for them. So you kind of have to have a filtration system for what you're going to pay attention to and what you aren't. That's why you can sit in a room with a bunch of people and then point out that there's an air conditioner and now they can hear it and it's really loud. But before you said it, they didn't even know it was there. And so our beliefs act like really big filtration systems, both in terms of the way we see the universe and in terms of the decisions we make about that universe. And so, you know, one of the things that I bump into quite a lot is women tell me that it's really impossible to find a good man these days. I hear this all the time from women. You can't find a good man anymore. All the good men are gone. What do they say? All the good men are married or gay, right? Like that's how it is. And the challenge with that limiting belief is that there's some truth to it, because if a man is a truly good man, he's probably not going to be single for very long, right? So there's some truth to that idea, but it's not actually true. And the challenge is that if you hold that belief, then you might find yourself at a networking event or a party or a nightclub or a yoga center or a gym or out on a canoe trip hiking in the woods somewhere. And you might meet a man who actually is a really good quality man. But if you have the belief that all the men are gone or gay, then you're not even going to engage. Because you can't see him for what he is, because your belief is, well, he's either gay or attached, so I'm not even going to go talk to him. Whereas the person who says, I'm not going to live with that belief, the person who says, I know that there is more than one. There are literally thousands of men in the world that would be a really great match. And so when I see one that I think is, I'm going to walk up and check out and find out if he is. That belief would, first of all, change what you saw and then change the way you behaved. So I am with you 100%. Changing your beliefs is one of the most significant ways to change your life. We have in our quantum shift program, we talk about the quantums of the human condition. In other words, a lot of times people think the word quantum means big, like I'm going to make a quantum shift. Well, no, quantum means incredibly small. It's the smallest version of a thing that is still the thing. So a molecule of water is a quantum of water. If you break the molecule anymore, it's not water anymore. And I would say that there are these quantums of human existence. And one of those quantums is belief. And if you can go down at that tiny little level and change one person by one belief, you can change their entire destiny.
Yes, I hear you on that. And when I hear you speak, I wonder, would you have those conversations as well with your studies with the Hadza Bushmen? Because you know, when we speak about evolution of people and how it affects from one generation to the next and what we put into our children's heads of what kind of beliefs, do you see that same thing happening with them when you visit them and speak to them? Or how do they deal with that, with beliefs? I mean, they're all of that, but is that different?
Their beliefs are a lot more simple than ours. And I don't mean simple in a derogatory sense. I just mean that their day-to-day life is so incredibly repetitive that most of what they believe is relatively true for them. I believe that if I find this little wax chimney coming out of a tree, there's going to be a beehive in there. You know, like their natural world is so consistently the same day by day by day by day. And the behavior of their people around them is so the same day by day by day by day. So for example, I imagine it's incredibly difficult for a Hadza woman to have this belief that all the good men are gone, because there's an active system for making sure that people end up getting paired up and end up getting married and having children, because it's the survival of the clan. So there's no way she would develop that belief. But they clearly do have their own belief systems, and it's been interesting to like compare them. So for example, I was asking the chief the last time I was there about 4 months ago, and I was asking the chief this question. I said, do you guys have depression? Now they don't have a word for depression, so it needed to be translated. And it was translated loosely to this: do you have incredible long-term sadness? That's the best way that we could discuss depression with them. And he says, well, yeah. I mean, we can be sad for 2 or 3 days. No, but I mean, can somebody be like sad for months? No, you'd never make it. You can't do that. You know, if something bad happens, you can be sad today. You can even be sad tomorrow. And maybe you can be sad the 3rd day. But after that, you got to snap out of it. You got to hunt. You got to gather. You got to take care of your clan. You don't have time for that. And so there's an interesting belief, don't you think? So then I said, well, does anybody ever here end their own life? Does anybody end their own life? And he's like, what do you mean end their own life? And I go, like I said, in our world out there, sometimes people kill themselves. They actually kill themselves. And you should have seen, Julia, the look on his face. What? Like the idea to him was alien. I was the first person in the history of ever to tell him that there are people on earth that actually end their own lives. He was amazed by it. And his amazement was only exceeded by, there was another man in the back of the cave sleeping on a skin. And when he heard he wasn't obviously very much asleep, because when he heard the question and my statement, he sat up and he started laughing like a belly laugh. I know it's not funny, except that for them, the idea that somebody would end their own life is hilarious. And then the chief goes, how do they do it? What a natural question to ask, right? Well, how do they do it? And I go, well, I said, sometimes they shoot themselves with a gun. He understands guns, right? They don't have them, but he understands them. I go, sometimes they shoot themselves with a gun. He's like no. It was shocking to him. And I go, and sometimes they jump off very high things. That he did not like that at all, because one of the highest causes of death in the Hadza community is falling off stuff, because they're hunting and gathering and collecting honey and stuff. So they die by falling all the time, and they know how unpleasant it is. So when I said, yeah, sometimes they jump off high things, they jump. He couldn't believe that somebody could command their system to jump. And then I said, and then some of them use poison. And this is funny. Julia, that whole day, we'd been with them for about 2 weeks. This is back in, or, you know, I think about February. And that day, we had spent the entire day trekking way across Africa to find this very special tree and carving out the meat from the tree and hammering it down into a fluid and then boiling it down to a paste and turning it into an incredible poison for hunting. So we'd spent the whole day talking about poison, and they'd shown us, you can touch it, but don't touch your eyes and stuff. You got to go wash your hands. Like, they taught us all how to do it. And so now that evening I say, well, some people use poison, and this is his reaction. He goes, yeah, I can see that. Like, it was just the strangest thing. But when you think about it, what they're really saying is they don't have depression because, frankly, they don't have time for that. And one of the things that it made me realize is that a lot of the suffering that we put ourselves through, it's because we have time for it.
Yeah, we have time for it. We have time for lots of struggles and things we want to believe in, that, you know, like all the complaining and all the gossiping and all of that is part of that. Like, people have enough time to do that. Well, they're probably not in real danger, right? So, and I'm thinking that as well with the, you know, any time in your life really, but if you are looking for thrill and for that kind of extra edge, I think young adults as well are looking for that. So I know that you have been offering trips to Kilimanjaro. And so my question would be, how much do you see people who are not experiencing like the Hadza Bushman danger on a day-to-day basis because of like survival danger, how much does that play into the psychology of someone either taking part in extreme experiences like the ones you were offering, or like, what does that mean to a person, to their psychology, to set themselves up for danger?
All right. So people, life used to be a lot more dangerous than it is today. It used to be a lot more dangerous. In other words, death was not something that we created by eating badly and eating junk food and all that kind of stuff. It wasn't something the way it is today. We live these basically affluence diseases or starvation at the other end of the spectrum. So, but for most of human history, we were evading predatory cats and predatory dogs and huge, you know, herbivorous animals defending themselves and falling out of trees and other tribes and terrible weather conditions. And so life was very, very difficult and very dangerous. And so our nervous system evolved to guide us through that, to help us deal with those things. And so when something terrible would happen, you know, if you walked around a corner and there's a lion there, then what are you going to do? Your body is immediately going to start to produce cortisol, adrenaline. Your body's going to physically create the biochemistry that it believes is going to guide you to the best chance of survival. In the case of the lion, the very best ways to deal with the lion are to freeze, frankly, or to try to climb a tree if there's one close enough to you. You don't have to think a lot about that. You just go into survival mode and you follow. And so your body takes over at that point. Now, the question is, how much adrenaline does your body need for each danger? And so when you're a teenager and your hormones are first making their way around the system and stuff, we're testing our hormones. That's why teenagers can often be quite tumultuous, right? Like these ups and downs with emotions, because they're just calibrating themselves. They're trying to figure it out. Like you can have a teenager feel like the girl that they were dating, and they think they were dating the girl because they had lunch with them once at school one day, and then the next day she's having lunch with another guy at the school, and then the jealousy comes up, and it's like horrible, horrible, horrible jealousy. And so they're learning. That's why we're supposed to practice these things. And so the challenge we have now is that our life is so incredibly safe that we never really get to calibrate our systems. We never really get to calibrate them for real danger. So I was quite lucky in my life to face some serious danger at different times, some little things in my childhood, but also in my, you know, formative years in my 20s and early 30s. I was in situations where I was once in a casino when guys walked in with an assault, with 4 men with assault rifles, started shooting the place up. I was once nearly killed by white rhinos that were trying to kill me. I have frequently found myself in a situation where there's a lions here. In fact, one day I was walking through a clearing and there were 15 lions there. So my adrenal system understands actual threat. And so what that means now is that when something comes at me, my body doesn't give me 100% adrenal rush. It goes, oh, you're getting a legal summons from somebody for a fallacious and disgusting and vexatious lawsuit? Great, we're gonna give you 30 units of adrenaline for that, just to get you a little angry so you can get yourself back in there. Whereas if a lion walked in, my body would go 100 units. And so one of the problems we have right now is that we have so protected our children children that they're not calibrated. And so now what's happening is that they're facing things in life that are difficult, but not dangerous. And they're flooding themselves with adrenaline. And that is one of the biggest reasons why this current situation is as dangerous as it is for society, because people have already been living with a baseline level of fear in the safest times in the history of times. And now all of a sudden the media is making the world look like the most dangerous place in the world. And the social fabric of America is going to be torn up, and there's going to be a civil war, they say, and this virus is going to come back, and it's going to get worse, and it's going to mutate, and you're not going to get immunity, and it's all terrible, and you're going to die. And, you know, everybody's flooding themselves with adrenaline. And of course, the more adrenaline they have, the less rational they are. And we can see that happening all over the place.
Yeah. And this is a reason why people are looking out for situations where they can actually feel like life. They want to feel alive. And then it's fascinating to hear you that we have a chance to distinguish between real and imagined danger. So as we are in the process of rounding up this wonderful conversation, and I wonder if what we talked about, like we talked about empathy and visualizations, and you know, the fact that we can only live in the now, really, and not to worry so much. What are in your world, like the key, maybe 3 key mindset things people can take away from this, from what we talked about?
So I think the baseline of it all is that for me is your emotional health is going to have this massive impact on the way your life works. And so, you know, really, truly trying to get in touch with your emotions and recognize that there are no good or bad emotions, that ultimately, for example, shame is not a bad emotion. It's an emotion designed to help you correct. And if you have not enough shame, you're not a very good person. You're not a very nice person, and society won't really like you. But if you have too much shame, you'll live a very difficult life because you'll hold yourself back from some of the things that you'd really rather enjoy. And so you've got to find this middle ground in those emotions. So I think that's one thing, is really truly experiment with and journal with and explore the human condition. And with that, I think one of the things is be you. Really be you. And I mean this at every age, but particularly when you're young, there's this, you know, this desire to fit in with the social condition, with the social, you know, connections that you've got around you. And, you know, here's a good way of putting it. If you see a boy or a girl, if you see a man or a woman and you're like, wow, I really like them, then you run this danger that you might modify your personality to try to attract them. And I'm using the relationship construct to pick that, but the fact is it's true of everything. You see, when we talk about kids giving into peer pressure, what does it mean? It means that in that moment, they value their connection with that peer group more than they do their own value system. And so I think what we really want to do is take a look and say, hang on a second now. I am going to be me, and by being me, I'm going to attract the right people around me, rather than me trying to make myself into something to attract those people. And I think that's another big key as we get, like, if we can get that when we're young, the rest of our life is a whole lot easier. And then the last one for me is recognizing that danger and fear are not the same thing. You know, it's totally possible to be in danger and not feel fear. Look, when somebody goes skiing for the first time, there's danger, right? And then they get better at it and they get better at it. And what do people constantly do? They ski closer and closer and closer to what's dangerous, don't they? Like, they start off on the bunny hill, and that's pretty dangerous when they're brand new. Now they can go up to the blue run because it's a little more dangerous. And then if they get good, they can go to the red run. It's a little bit more dangerous. And then if they can go to the black, they can go to the black run. So they're constantly going up to the edge of danger. What they're doing is allowing themselves to get as close to the danger as they can right before fear kicks in. And so there's definitely a difference between danger and fear. And what I want us all to do is to recognize that danger, we have to be real about what danger really is and when we should be applying fear. And the fact is that most of what's going on right now that we're all afraid of isn't actually danger. It's not immediate present danger. It might be social danger, and we should do something about it. But we're allowing it to be like it's danger in my chest right now. And I think that if we can learn to separate danger and fear and realize that you can be in danger without fear, and you can also be in fear without danger. And that is dangerous, because once you're in fear, your intelligence goes down. By the way, That's why the extremists are causing so much problem at the moment. It doesn't matter whether the extreme people on the left or the extreme people on the right. They are operating from fear. And when you operate from fear, your intelligence takes a big dip, your connection to logic slips away, and worse than that, your empathy disappears. You see, when somebody's not in fear at all, they care about the whole world. And then they start feeling a little bit fearful and they become nationalistic. And then they become even more fearful and they become sort of tribalistic or even racist. And then they become even more fearful and they only protect their family. And it can go so far that you can have a mother drowning in the water and one of her children jumps in to help her and she'll drown her own child in fear because she has no empathy in that moment. So what we want to do is do the very best we can to stay away from fear, except in the rare twice or 3 or 4 times in your entire life when you really need to have it, and not to live with that ongoing anxiety, because it will affect the entire way you see reality and how you make decisions.
Awesome.
We didn't come into this life for it to be easy. We came in for it to be difficult. If you went to a movie and it was just easy the whole time, if nothing really happened, you wouldn't stay till the end. So we want drama. We just have to accept that we also want it in our lives, even in the moments when we don't really feel like we want it.
Wow. Thank you so much. I've got one closing question for you, Eric, and then I'm sure you have busy and want to go. I would like to know from you, what excites you at the moment?
You know, when things break down, they can be built to be better. And so that's what excites me at the moment. You know, things have broken down. You know, trust in the government has broken down. You know, social divides have been opened, and society itself is breaking down in some ways. And our understanding of health has been broken down. And as all this stuff is breaking, it says to me there's an opportunity for each of us to work on ourselves. And then once we've identified how to do that, to then work with the people around us, and then work with the people around us, and actually create some of the change that I think our society really needs right now. So what I'm most excited about is doing what I can to support people in living the very best version of life that they can. And I enjoy that so much every day because it's what helps me live the best version of the life that I can.
And you're doing a fabulous job at that, Eric. Thank you so much. I'm truly deeply honored and privileged to have had this chance to talk to you. And I thank you so much. I wish you well and hope our paths will cross soon again.
I'm sure they will, Julia. Thanks so very much. Nice to be here.
Okay, thank you so much. Bye.
So that was Eric Edmeades live and in action in my interview of Mind of the Week for you, with lots of insights and his mindset tips for young adults. But really, they're for all of us, isn't it? So take them with you, share them out, and hope you enjoyed this interview as much as I did. On a little side note, this was the hottest interview I'd ever had. Yes, because it was literally recorded on the hottest day of the year. It was hilarious, and so that's a behind the scenes for you. What else is there to say? Well, if you like this video, why not subscribe and like to more of this, and subscribe to the channel. I hope I'll see you, and I hope I hear from you. Bye.